Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the Vaults Remastered. Today, we're going to talk about a problem that I'm sure a lot of GM, DM, keeper, whatever game master people out there have run into, especially if you got some sort of intricate problem solving mystery sort of campaign or game or whatever you're running. You're running these sessions week after week, but your players just don't seem to follow it. Like they're not really sure what's going on. They're taking notes and they're finding clues and you're dropping hints, but session after session, they just maybe are lost or not really following the breadcrumbs you've been laying for weeks and weeks. What's going on? Is it too complicated? Maybe. Is your story terrible? Probably not. I think the real issue though is that you're maybe just not using a little technique that I've started using, and that is actionable clues. So that's what I want to talk about today. 7 ways in which you can use these actionable clues, this strategy, to catalyze the action in your game. To take that complexity that you've been talking about and trying to introduce to your players every week, but they're unable to follow it. And it may be because you're using clues and not actionable clues. Let's take a look at the difference. So, hey, what's a clue? Because I'm sure you're dropping them in your game, right? The purpose of a clue, it gives information, it suggests a direction, right? Maybe it hints at some mystery, it gives a piece of lore, it suggests the presence of something threatening or some resource that the players need. Its main function is to just give a little bit of depth to the story, to the game world, right? You're dropping these clues everywhere. As far as the engagement goes, yeah, these clues they can pique your players' curiosity, their interest. They can encourage exploration, but they don't always directly influence the plot's direction, the progression, or what the players are supposed to be doing. Your clues are maybe just little tidbits that, and make your setting a little more enriched, but they don't necessarily require the players to do something with it. It's information. And so the outcome of this is that as they're discovered, they're not leading to an immediate change in the story's direction. They might not be giving any clear direction or, place to go, decisions to be made. They're maybe a little piece of the puzzle that becomes relevant later, but they're not doing anything now. They're building your world, perhaps. That's basic idea of a clue. Now, what's an actionable clue? Because this is the type of clue you want to give, especially if you're running some sort of conspiracy, mystery, grand scheme that is leading your players through this woven web of plots and subplots. Actionable clues. The purpose here is similar. It is information, yes. It's usable information, though. It directly impacts your narrative. It directly impacts the characters' decisions. It's tied to your main plot, it's tied to the characters' backstories, and it's designed specifically to unlock new quests, solve problems, overcome obstacles. The big thing here, guys and gals, is that it demands a response right then and there. It's not something you just throw it in a notebook and call it a day. Okay? It demands a response. Engagement. So these actionable clues directly involve the players in your story. They require the players to actively interpret, actively investigate, actively decide on a course of action. They're going to integrate your player's agency in the progression of the narrative, of the story. So, what they choose to do, what they do with it, how the outcome of their investigation, that directly moves the player or the story in one direction or another. The outcome, if they're successful in interpreting and acting on this clue that they find, it can unlock a new pathway, it can reveal a critical insight, it can give them some advantage to some challenge that they're facing. And even if they fail, that can open up a new narrative avenue. It can maintain the momentum regardless because now the players have a choice they've just made that's given a consequence immediately. And even if it wasn't the consequence they wanted, it's still a consequence that they have to deal with and they have to move forward with it. So, what I want to do now is take a look at the 7 ways in which I have been using actionable clues in my converted Pathfinder 2E game known as the Vaults. And I'm going to give you examples for each one of these. So, we're going to take a deep dive. So, I suggest you go ahead and grab your wetsuit because we're going in. Number one, and this is probably the no-brainer, your actionable clue, whatever it is, and this is probably the only one that is in order of importance. But number one, your actual clue has to drive the plot forward. Otherwise, what's the point? So you give this clue and make sure it's a clue that the players are looking for, or it's something they need to overcome a known threat. It shouldn't be some mystery, some, oh, what does this mean, right? No, it's they came to the temple to find X, they find X. They came to the secret library to discover Y in order to overcome the BBEG. Well, they find Y, whatever that is. So then you're gonna use these clues to advance your story. It's giving your players information. It's pushing them forward towards critical junctions and decisions that you have plotted out. Right? You know the A, B, C, D of your plot, whether it's linear or some sort of node-based system that you're using. You know where they're going. At least you should know where they're going, unless you're doing some really crazy open world where it doesn't matter. Well, in that case, then maybe that's part of the problem. You really don't have a plot. Therefore, you probably don't need actionable clues. Anyway, I digress. Let's take a look at an example from my game world. In my Tuesday game, the players are investigating a kidnapping of a bunch of children from one of the settlements that they have recently arrived in. And so they've tracked the abductor, which is known as an assimilant. So if you are familiar with the concept of the Borg in Star Trek universe world system there is a entity within my game world that is a construct based not artificial, it's an arcano intelligence, an AI system, and it is attempting to assimilate biological life forms and turn them into mechanical life forms. And its servants or its thralls, its drones, are known as assimilants. So they've tracked this creature to its lair, and after defeating it, discovered this slate, this chalkboard, if you will. And the information on the slate, it has clues. It has revealing not just the antagonist's big plan, but also potential ways to disrupt those plans. So it was real easy to find. It wasn't hidden. It was just propped up in the little camp area in the below the lab area that the assimilant was working and doing their cruel experimentation on the kidnappees. And the players have seen this thing. They want to interpret it. They want to investigate this clue because decoding and understanding what's written on it, because it's written in a coded language, will reveal the results of these nanite experiments that are going on with these children. So I set a medicine DC skill check. So this is where we have to have an action now. We have a clue. It doesn't just have information on it. It requires the players to decode it. Bang, medicine check to see if you understand this weird symbols and language and references that are on it. And if they do, they can either have a successful result or a failure result, right? Success, they reveal the information on the process that's being outlined, detailed on the slate, including the weaknesses or countermeasures that could be developed for a cure or some sort of shield vaccine, if you will, against this assimilation process. Even if they fail on this roll, which did happen in my game, the player character who was attempting to interpret this thing failed their check. And so the medical details remain obscure. They only gave some general information, some hints about the complexity of what's going on with this process. But here's the thing, they have an action to move forward. They are prompted now to go and maybe find a specialist or do some further research. This plays beautifully into Pathfinder's downtime system. So now this character has a downtime activity that they can focus on. And any of the other characters who wish to assist also have something they can focus on. So bang, even though there was a failure, they know this thing is important. They've got some clues about what it's talking about, and now they want to go dive deeper on it. Right? That is aspect one of actionable clues. Directly driving your plot forward. Second one, lore integration and world building. This is typically what I mean when I'm talking about actionable. I'm talking about taking your complicated lore, all of your awesome, cool world building, and instead of just info dumping it onto your players, you give it to them in chunks based upon things they're doing. So in this case, we have clues they're finding in the lair of a bad guy, and they're interpreting these clues, they're investigating these clues, and they're getting information about your world. So that's what number 2 is talking about. You embed clues that directly relate your game's lore and the plot in this clue. So this is going to reveal lore, history, it's going to enrich your game world, it's going to give the players context for the campaign's plot, and it's going to hopefully encourage your players to delve even deeper into your lore, uncover more of the secrets, more of the events that are shaping the entire world around them. It's allowing you to showcase all this cool stuff that you've got all your notes about with your game world, and the players are doing it dynamically based upon things they're discovering. Example of this from my, I believe this is, yeah, from my Tuesday game again. Aside from that slate, that chalk slate they discover, they also discover what I call a lorage crystal. They are, kind of the thumb drives of my under earth vaults world. They're these crystals that the rune crafters are able to embed or imprint with information, images, recordings, etc. Kind of think about it like a flash drive, a CD, whatever you want to call it. Lorage crystals. And so they discover this thing. They don't know what's on it. It has encoded information, of course, that is about this Nexus, this AI system I was talking about. Its plans around the Vantasphere, which is, and by the way, if you don't know some of the things I'm referencing, that's because you haven't subscribed to my channel. You haven't been following and notifying yourself to all my videos that have been out there. So if you haven't done that yet, go ahead and pause real quick, like, subscribe, notify yourself. Go back and look at some of my playlist stuff, and you'll see what I'm referring to here by Nexus and the Vantasphere. Anyway, back to what I'm talking about here. This crystal has information about the BBEG and their interest in this Vantasphere thing. And it's information about these experiments that are being conducted on these children that the player characters have been trying to find. So they find this crystal if they search the lab carefully enough, and then they're able to investigate it, try to figure out what it does, how to access it, what's on it. And if they find the information, so they have to access it, then they have to decipher this coded language because it's in machine speech, as I call it, the language of the constructs, this AI system. So they're going to need to do arcana, they're going to need to do like lore gems, whatever, in order to figure out what is on this thing and get it off of there. The results, if they're able to do all this stuff, they get detailed plans on the Nexus, insights into the interest in the Vantasphere, and maybe additional information on how to counteract this nanite thing that they're using to corrupt people, to assimilate them. So notice that this is another little trick, and I think I'll give a shout out to Alexandria in there. This is that whole idea of you want to have multiple clues about the same thing. So in case the players, let's say, never find the slate over here, never interpret the language, the medical experiments and about the nanites, well, maybe they find this lorage crystal and interpret that because it has similar information. Or from a GM, you can have the same information on it, depending if they find one, both, or whatever. You're able to, tweak this as needed. So anyway, success, they figure out this information, they get lore about the world, about Nexus, the Vantasphere, etc. If they fail, the crystal remains locked. Maybe they only get partial information. Maybe it's a failure versus critical failure. But again, it's going to hint that there's importance, and it's going to suggest that, hey, maybe if we can somehow figure out how to unlock this, maybe we go find an expert. We need to go find some rune crafter or something like that. That could lead to a quest, a side quest, something to that effect, to go find somebody who can unlock this thing for them, right? Downtime, new explorations they need to take. Number 3, you want to have your actionable clues have a personal connection to your characters. So when you're designing these clues, you want to make sure they're directly relevant, if you can, to the PC's backstories, their personal goals. You want to tie their backgrounds, their objectives from these clues to the player characters and to the story itself as it's unfolding. This will drive your character's development. It's going to give them maybe quests of a personal nature or challenges that align with their goals and their backstories. And I've said this a few times in some of my other videos. actionable videos, your player characters, your players have given you backstories, right? These 20-page documents about the life and times of their character. There's lots of information there. Why don't you use it to make some clues that can tie into that stuff, right? This will enrich your role play. It's going to give motivation for your characters to engage with your campaigns. So rather than just finding a humdrum clue, maybe it's a clue that somehow relates to their backstory, and then that gets them to want to dig deeper into this particular clue and whatever path that leads them down. An example again, this one comes from my Thursday game, which is set in the same game world. It's just that it's a different group of players, and they're headed in a slightly different direction, investigating a different situation. They are not looking for kidnapped children. They are trying to figure out the mysteries behind this mask that they have recovered, some sort of powerful magical relic. It's kind of like an Oni face mask, but it has like draconic features instead of devilish features or demon features on it, and it seems to be triggering some sort of revenant creature to want to come and get it back. Again, if you know what I'm talking about, you got to go watch some of those older videos. You'll see what I'm talking about. But anyway, this mask is causing them potential problems, but they don't want to get rid of it because it has potential benefits to them. So they are investigating this thing. They've gone to another area within the game world, a small vault where there is a recently discovered ruin of a shrine to some draconic god or something to that effect. And they're trying to see if this mask has any connection, because again, there's a draconic mask here. So they are going to be trying to discover things as they go to this shrine, to this temple, and as they're searching around this place, they're going to come across potentially personal items and notes from key figures in the game world. So people they haven't met, but important NPCs from the history of the game world. And by finding these things, it can inspire your characters to follow in the footsteps of those other people, those mythical figures, perhaps, or those diabolical figures, whatever the case may be, and perhaps learn from the mistakes they made. So, whomever maybe owned this mask once upon a time, they might find information about them there that tells them what this mask does or what to watch out for it. So within this shrine, there is information about the previous owner of the mask. It's hidden in a location known as the Weeping Chamber, which is a secret little room set somewhere in the temple. And in there is this mold, as you can see in the picture. It is the the mold that the mask was created within. So they could find this mold, which matches the mask that they possess, and then by studying it, by investigating it, they can try to see if there's some connection to the mold, the mask, and then the lore that the party has already uncovered or hopes to uncover. So we're looking at some basic investigations here. Maybe there's some lore going on here. The exact skill checks don't exactly matter. Obviously, they should tie into the object or the clue itself, but trying to figure out, well, this mold, what was its purpose? Why was this mask made? What's going on? Who made it? Success, they'll reveal the mask's origins and hints at its powers, at its weaknesses, which would obviously be important to the character who is possessing this mask right now, because they're concerned that the mask might possess them. So it could give them clues on how to harness the power or perhaps defeat this revenant creature, whatever the case may be. If they fail at this investigation, then the significance of the mold and thus the mask remains obscure. That's going to complicate things, right? It's going to delay the party's understanding of the mask's importance. It's going to have to give them incentive to go and look deeper, go in a different direction, perhaps. Maybe take this mold to some sort of crafter back in the settlement who might be more knowledgeable of such things to do some downtime activities and see if they can help out understanding what's going on here. All right, the fourth one, the fourth aspect of your actionable clues to use is they will unlock quests. So when you're designing these clues, a great idea is to make sure that they lead to new quests or side quests. I've already kind of been giving you examples of this as I've been going in the previous three, but this is specifically something that you want to focus on. they're going to give direction of where to go next, right? So not necessarily where the plot goes, but a new quest, a new side quest, something that, hey, now that I have this information, I need to go over here and get that other information. This gives narrative depth to your world. Side quests is an example, so you can broaden the scope of what the players are doing. It'll suggest potential new steps, additional courses of action. So instead of just, hey, from A, we're supposed to go to B, but this new clue, it's suggesting maybe we head over here to C, or maybe we go way over there to K, right? You've got new options that your clues are opening up for your players, and this is unlocking more of your game world for them. Example, from my Tuesday game. This is the one where they're pursuing the children and this assimilant and this AI system. Again, in this constructy, clockworky lab area, there are logs that have been hidden that detail the experiments that have been going on here. And within the logs, there is some suggestions of a potential conflict between Nexus, the BBEG, and the architect, whomever that is, who is actually running this lab. And this potentially unlocks quests again to explore a potential fracture between these two entities, even though they're supposed to be working together. Or maybe it gives the player characters ideas for finding allies within the Nexus's ranks. So if they search and find this item and then investigate it, interpret it, it's written in machine speech, they can do a skill check, right? Lore of constructs, maybe society, if they know something about the constructs of the game world. Maybe they have some lore about engineering. They make this check. Success, they'll interpret the information within the log. They'll discover this conflict with the Nexus, maybe give some ideas of potential allies, fractures that the player characters can pursue and exploit later, gives them new quests that they might be able to pursue at a later date. So this is giving them not, right then and there kind of information, but hey, maybe we should go and pursue this lead. Failure, you get some fragmented insights. There are broader plots out there. Specifics are unclear. More investigations needed. External help is needed. Translation, downtime, exploration, got to get more info. So now your players have something that they can do when they go back to the settlement or move on to, let's say, a bigger town. Or, hey, we should go find a engineer out there, some sort of, artifice master, a tinkerer person that might have more information for us. All right, the fifth aspect of these clues, these actionable clues, is they should involve interactive discovery. So when you present clues with this aspect, they're interconnected clues. So when you discover and interpret one of them, it immediately leads to another one, creating this chain of discovery. And this encourages the players to engage deeply within the game world. And this could just be within one room, right? You discover this, figure it out, that leads you to go over here. This is almost like classic sort of video game kind of stuff, right? I'm thinking about is Tomb Raider. I forget which one it was, but I remember like you had to do this first, then you had to go over here and do that, and then do this, and then you could navigate through a room. That's a great example of interactive discovery. So encourages deeper exploration, using combinations of skills, using teamwork to try to figure out the narrative, what's going on, and follow this thread, follow this lead. So the clues are designed to weave together your lore, characters' backstory, the current campaign narrative. They're going to reward players taking initiative. They're going to reward players that are engaging with the progress of the story. And the discovery, it's an active process, right? It's your players have to explore, they have to interpret, they have to make decisions based upon the clues that they're discovering. Again, it's not just something they write in a notebook, found clue, and throw it somewhere on page 37. It's a clue, they have to use it right now if they wish to navigate and unlock this clockwork vault or whatever it is. An example of this in my Thursday game, the one with the Oni mask, the whole draconic shrine thing with the weeping chamber. So if they find this chamber, within the chamber is information about some lore about the relic that they have, this mask, and trying to figure out its significance. And then what quests it might unlock to confront some threats that may be lingering or even ones that are coming their way. And it's a multiple step process. So, step one is a simple example here. There are a bunch of inscriptions written by this NPC known as the Breaker of Chains, and they're trying to interpret these inscriptions. What do they mean? So, they're going to find these things, and they're kind of obscure, maybe hidden somewhere, maybe in a diary notebook thing, or maybe etched somewhere on a tablet. Who knows? They have to find them first, right? Check. They find the inscriptions. They then have to interpret them. They have to investigate this writing. If they successfully do that, it reveals this journey that this NPC has gone through, who was the previous owner, the one who created this mask in the first place. This might involve a religion skill check to decipher the significance of these inscriptions, because the mask was made for of a ritualistic nature, of a divine nature. And this can help them understand the story of this NPC, who's not directly involved in the story right now with them and trying to kill them or a friend of theirs. It's just a NPC who has a powerful integral role within the story that they don't know anything about. But now they can discover this person's title, a little bit of their history. If they then uncover this information, that can then give them clues to take an action of what to do next. So this chamber has more information about this breaker and the sacrifices they made. And so if they interpret the initial inscriptions, this is going to give them more information about this temple, the shrine that they're in itself. Like, what was its purpose? What was this person doing here? Why were they here? They then start to interpret that information. They'll realize, oh, this person was a worshiper of this draconic entity. That's why they're in this temple, and this mask is some um, homage, or what's the word I'm looking for here? An honor to this queen, to this draconic entity that has been reborn. So it leads to that, which is one of the BBEGs in the game. So it's giving them information about this person, this entity, this force, this draconic, I don't want to say bad guy necessarily, but somebody that the player characters are going to be in opposition to at some point, likely. Success, so if they manage this chain of successes, the link between the inscriptions, the link between those, and then the other inscriptions or the temple's architecture itself unlocks this new quest. Who is this temple to? Who is this entity that they discover the name of? Or why were they worshipped? What happened to them? Because this person has disappeared. This draconic entity has not been seen in generations, and there's only rumors of their return from this other vault that's nearby, this other massive cavern. Even if the players fail, they might, not catch all of the story about the breaker, about this entity that they worship. But even so, they still have this mysterious inscriptions, this mysterious location that they can go and pursue at a later date. Again, downtime perhaps, trying to find an alternative path to uncover this. Or maybe they find some clues that lead them to, oh, there's another temple, or oh yeah, there's a book somewhere in the library that is in the settlement that might have information about this script, or the name that they find that they couldn't interpret themselves. So it leads the story forward. It's uncovering this BBEG and how they're acting through perhaps this mask, perhaps this so-called breaker of chains. Who is this? All right, the sixth one, your actionable clues should be enhancing group dynamics. So you want to make these clues to require problem solving through the collaboration of your PCs. I kind of just alluded to that in that chain of discovery, but this is a little bit broader in the sense where each PC has a different skill set, perhaps a different aspect that they can bring to the table that, when combined, reveals something. So it's not chain one, two, three clues. It's each person is contributing something to unlock this particular clue itself. So it's going to reinforce your group's cohesion, their dynamics. So it's incorporating the need for a range of skills from multiple players And each player's discovery, each player's understanding, it's interacting with the others. It depends upon all these other characters' abilities, bringing it all together. And you can integrate NPCs or other experts in order for this to happen if you want. Let's say your party is limited on certain skills. Well, then, hey, introduce an NPC that can help them. That's not a big deal, right? An example here from my Thursday game again in this shrine, this temple, this draconic entity. The party can discover this mycelial fungal map that is on the wall of the shrine itself. And at first, it appears this is just weird but natural fungal growth. What's the big deal? But if they as a group, so you've set this up like, hey, there's this weird kind of growth all over the wall. It doesn't seem, normal per se. At first it seems, natural, but as you look at it, it's a little bit weird. That's your trigger, your clue that there's a clue here. And then you can have your player characters each contribute something to deciphering what the heck is this fungal growth on the wall. It's actually a map if they can figure it out. So perception checks, somebody's identifying the different types of fungi and that it's this isn't normal. These things shouldn't be growing here. Somebody, spiked this up on the wall for a purpose. Nature check to realize that the types of fungi, different colors, different, bioluminescence is representing different features, different areas of interest. And then survival, hey, that's a map, and it's a map of whatever these vault areas that we haven't explored before. Arcana, maybe lore of dungeons or the caverns or whatever, interpreting magical aspects that are represented on this map. Hidden dangers, perhaps mystical treasures, things that without this check would have been missed. So each individual is adding something to this puzzle that is built together, and if they fully interpret this stuff, the party will uncover there's like a hidden path to some secret chamber, perhaps in the shrine, perhaps that weeping chamber, perhaps some secret path that leads to the settlement that they all came from. Maybe somebody's coming and going to this shrine from the settlement. There's some connection between this draconic shrine and the settlement, which is for these peaceful pacifist Oread that are living. What's the connection? We now have a clue. We now have a direction. The player characters can pursue this, right? It's going to give, also might just be a broad map of the area so that if the player characters want to explore this section of the vaults more for whatever other reasons, it's, detailing where there's potential traps, where there's, mystical areas of power that they might want to go to collect resources. Who knows? You can use it for all kinds of things. And even if they fail to interpret the map, it's still a map. They might still recognize some of the locations on the map. They just don't see the dangers or the potential, pitfalls if they go to certain areas where maybe there's resources are not clearly, recognized from the map. It's still a decent map. It's just not as good as it could have been. All right, then the seventh aspect of your actionable clues that you want to use. That is environmental interactions and exploration. So with these clues, you can use the environment itself as a clue, and that can be interacted with and explored through, again, skill checks. So these clues are going to encourage players to interact with their surroundings themselves, making exploration itself a key part of gameplay. So not just all the clues are in a location post encounter mode, but just traveling through an area, like through the vaults, through these caverns, through these tunnels. There could be environmental clues, about. This is probably a really good example if you go to like D&D with like layers. Dragons have layers, and there's layer actions, layer effects within the surrounding area. This is a great idea for that because maybe the player characters don't know what's living in the area, but if they discover these environmental clues and interpret them correctly, it can give them lots of heads up as to what is in the area, what the dangers are. So this can lead to new locations that they haven't discovered. Let's say they're doing some hex crawling, right? Revealing secrets that they weren't aware of. It could trigger events that are tied to your main plot. So it doesn't just have to be some random thing traveling through the tunnels. It could trigger something in your actual campaign. An example of this in my Thursday game again, as the party was exploring, they had to go through like a spelunking phase to go through what I was calling what was it called? The lower slab. So they had to journey through this narrow, tight set of tunnels and caverns, crawling, spelunking through until they found the cavern, the little micro vault where that assimilant had taken the kids. But as part of that journey, they had to travel through some environmental hazards and such. And one of the hazards, one of the traps was these hallucinating spore clouds because they knew that the place was very fungal and very geologically active, a lot of moisture, a lot of steam, so a lot of slimes, a lot of massive towering fungal growth, etc. So when they were journeying through some of these caverns, they encountered some of these hallucinating spore cloud traps. Now, rather than just like, oh yeah, they do damage and you take X amount of poison damage, while that could have certainly been an effect, what I had them actually useful for was a lore reveal. So as they were hallucinating from these spores, of course they did get attacked at the right after the fact, so it was a trap in that sense, but I also use it as a vehicle to communicate some lore. So when they were hallucinating, failure was actually good, if you believe it or not. They started having weird visions of, you know, dark dragon coming out of the shadows and eating them, or a massive meteor cracking into the planet and the whole, surface world collapsing into the under earth itself, which seems, oh, these are just bizarre visions, but no, they're actually historical events from the game world. They're also almost premonitions, that draconic vision that they had. That is a wink wink nudge nudge, guess what, something's going to come and it's not going to be nice. So I was communicating that information. Now later I'll use that seeded information I just gave them through triggering this trap as something maybe they discover in that shrine, in that temple. Oh wait, this is a shrine to some dark shadowy dragon. Wait, I had a vision of that thing. Are those connected? Maybe. Oh, maybe this is a bad guy, right? So that's what I would use that as an example of. So you can take advantage of your environment as well. All right, so let's wrap this up with some last words, final thoughts here. So actionable clues. Let's summarize this. These are clues that are information, right? A clue is information, and you embed it in your game world. But that's kind of where the difference between a regular clue, which is information that the players maybe get and they do something with, they don't do something with, it's maybe has a meaning, doesn't have a meaning. You are embedding this with intention. It has action attached to it. So you want to use these clues to create this dynamic, interactive storytelling environment. So when the players find these things, it's changing their world. There's something they interact with. They got to make skill checks, right? The environment is dynamic, right? The clue is requiring things to be done. The clues also, if they're actionable, they tie into the immediate challenge that the players have, right? It's driving your plot forward by solving these things, by overcoming them, by figuring them out, whatever the case may be, by using the information. Each time they discover one of these clues, it's a stepping stone towards a direction, towards the climax, towards where the campaign's supposed to go. These clues also integrate the character's narrative. So, what they are doing, their backstory, what their goals are, they're able to still have that agency as they discover these clues. So, the clues aren't necessarily just clues that you are planting to drive the plot. The clues, because they're related to the players themselves, allows them to do something with it to move their story forward. And last but not least, your actionable clues should be a reward for the players who engage in active exploration, who are engaging in decision making and problem solving, right? They're getting something out of it. Not necessarily loot, but they're getting their character story moved forward. They're getting the plot moving forward. They're getting subplots unlocked, new quests, side quests unlocked. It's expanding their knowledge of the game world and making the whole thing more fun and more exciting. So there you go, ladies and gents. That is my take on actionable clues, how I'm using them in my game. So if you're interested in more of this sort of content, as I said, like and subscribe to the channel, like the video, subscribe to the channel, notify yourself for more. And I hopefully will be able to crank out some more of these for you guys, get into some more lore of my game world, and share some more thoughts I have on how to make things more actionable for your Pathfinder, D&D, whatever it is game that you're running. In the meantime, take care of yourselves and have a good evening, good day, good weekend, all that. Peace out.